Welcome back, dear friends. It's another exciting day at Steamhead, getting on with the Luminescent Epizoescope. Let's have a look and see where we're getting to. There's the original one, which, as always, is proving most useful for getting measurements off and things, as I didn't actually make very many drawings originally. And here is the new one. We've got another spinny thing. As you know, I do love spinny things. We've got that spinny thing with its little bearings in there. And now look, a Nipkow disc. And my battery's about to go flat. I'll have to get back to you, but from the front, it just looks lovely. And I'm so pleased to have, that varnish that I sprayed on, or primer, gave it that lovely mottled effect. It could have been an absolute disaster, or it could have just been invisible, but it has turned out beautifully. Very pleased with that. Right, I'm going to get on with it. I've got the horn gluing, having painted it yesterday and split it up, ready to zoink, do that with. So I'm going to be getting on with that whilst my battery is charging. I will get back to you soon. That's what I'm talking about. After much umming and ahhing, I've got it sorted out. I had to extend the Monson ring a little bit, but that looks great now, and it just comes down, and I love the way that curves round and fixes in. So that end is now complete. Let's look at the other end. Ooh, ah, Cantona, look! Little flickery thing, and I've fed the wires through this piece of 8mm annealed copper so that they go inside, but that just looks nice, doesn't it? Oh, how exciting. And obviously I can't resist. Ooh. Ooh, what shall I do now? Let's study the original. Here's the original. Isn't it funny? Because when I look at it, the human mind is amazing. I just focus on this bit, literally, and I don't notice all the cack in the background, but it all tends to blur together when you use the camera. I think what I'm going to do, mount the motor and do these other little twiddly bits. Yeah, pipe work, I think. I'll get them done now. It's still moving. Excellent. The idea of this is it's going to take the steam, that's boiled water in there, along. There's a regulator valve here which is controlled like this, and then the steam comes along and drives the motor. Whereas in actual fact the wires from the motor go up through here and down through there. You spot what that is? It's one of those sparklet canisters that we like to use on our clocks. Actually, rather than running the pipe all around the houses, what I realised is with this piece of stud, because it's 10mm, there's plenty of room to drill an hole through the middle for the wires. That's great, because the Monson rings have a hole there and a hole right through in the bottom, so now the wires can just come straight down and into the middle of it. Oh look, wires. There's the ones from the little PIR sensor, and there's the ones from the lovely flickering candle, and shortly there'll be more, but it'll all need wiring up. Oh, it's exciting. There we are. There's the motor enclosure with a lovely little pulley that I'd found where I'd hidden them, and the wires come down through the hole, and they go. I've just found this piece of spiral sheath stuff to protect the wires, and it just fits through that hole I drilled coincidentally, so that can take them down to there. Oh, what a joy. Oh, and the diode wired the wrong way across the terminals. It's just to stop any back EMF noise and stuff from the motor. I do love this annealed 8mm copper pipe. It's brilliant stuff. You just have to remember to straighten it before you cut a bit off if you want it straight. Isn't that lovely? And on the original one I used a brass bit off an old ballcock valve thing, but I haven't got one of those, so this time I found some lovely silver rod, so I've fixed that there to support this, and that's lovely now. And then look at this, these lovely little 8mm fittings, my gorgeous end feed, and the top of that, which we were talking about, I just turned down ever such a little bit, and it's now 8mm, so it fits in there. How lovely. And I'm going to leave this silver because I think it's going to look nicer. It's all getting a little bit too coppery towards the back, and that'll add a bit of variety. Lovely. Bit of a delayed start this morning. I hope that you don't know what it's like, but I couldn't sleep last night. It is horrible. Comfortable, right temperature, not hungry, not thirsty. everything just right. Nice early start. I thought, right, I'm going to have a good night's sleep. Go to sleep about sort of 10:15, lovely. Lie awake for until well after midnight, listening to the radio, which I need to do anyway, otherwise I start worrying about stuff. And then woke up at 3 o'clock, lie awake for 2 hours. And actually, it's ridiculous, the best laid plans. Anyway, I got up this morning, took the dog out, got some orders and things sent off, had some lunch by that time. It's amazing how time flies. And then just came over all tired, so I've just put my feet up and have a little lie down in a darkened room. Managed to get a little kip for 20 minutes, but that's reinvigorated me. There's the dog. She's convinced it's time for a walk. I've shown her that it is pouring with rain. I was woken up from my lovely slumber by thunder. Who would have thought in the middle of the afternoon? Anyway, she is determined to try and get me to take her for a walk and won't believe that it is raining outside the back door and therefore must be raining outside the front door. I'll have to open it and show her anyway. Right, so what we're doing today is I'm making all the little bits and pieces to go along here. Now I've moved the original one from the workshop into the kitchen next to the computer because I was realising, as I've got very little notes or anything about this, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. I've just got a huge CAD drawer with loads of stuff all over it. I've been doing some spring cleaning. Well, CAD spring cleaning anyway. I've bought into the kitchen because I kept having to go backwards and forwards getting measurements. So yeah, what we're working on are all these bits and pieces, and also that disc and the ones on the gears and stuff like that. Here's the drawing. As you can see, it's just evolved as I worked it out, and I didn't label anything or anything. So what I've been doing, I've made a nice little collection down here of all the 10mm bits to make up those mechanisms. I'm making a note by each one as to whether it's 10mm, 3mm or 2. I've redrawn all these bits and labelled them, so I got a better idea of what's going on. So now I'm just slowly cutting these out. And then I look forward to sitting down and starting to put these little bits together. We've moved up a notch now, actually stopping me from working. Oh, soon, Ziggy, soon. Is the tensioner, because I thought that's a nice place to start. So I'm going to do the tensioner first of all. Thank you. Today, it's time to pack things up. The machines, I've tested them thoroughly, they're all working. I must get them packed up and sent off to the customer. Now, packing up machines like this is quite an interesting thing. I've tried several different methods and I've settled on this one. I realised after a while this is the way forwards. You've got a nice solid cardboard box made to measure, double wall thickness. The machine sits in there, and then it also means I can use cable ties to fix other bits and pieces inside, along with holding the cable out of the way so it doesn't rattle around and things. And the whole thing, the machine is supported using some screws. 4 pieces of plywood glued onto the back, hot melt glue, and a screw through into each corner of the machine, into the sort of reinforcing block, so it's ever so strong, which means it can be upside down or whatever, it doesn't make any difference. But obviously that doesn't protect it against people hurling it about and things. So I then put this box inside an even bigger one with lots and lots of lovely biodegradable void fill, as they call it, which acts as a cushion. They're not the smallest boxes I've ever seen, but it's because they're double packaged. Hopefully will be sufficient to protect the delicate machines within them. People already started using them as tables. So today's project is very nice. I've just finished building a Nipkow Throbwell, a ready-made one for someone, and now I've got all these trays, each one with the parts for another part of these mechanisms on top. So how lovely. I've tapped some holes, and now I'm going to I'll sand them up and then drill them and machine them and gradually put them together and get them fixed. Here, that's here, 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 and here, and here. And I've got these lovely, or 2 lovely gears sprayed up, and I've got the holes tapped and a little hole for a grub screw drilled into there at an angle. First time I've tried that and it seems to work very well. And I've even got the slotted disc that spins round sprayed. Now, it was a toss-up, as you know, if you've watched these in the past, whether it was actually going to be covered in specks of dust and fluff and stuff that comes from heaven only knows where, especially as I hoover it before I put it under the air filtered spray booth thing. But not a speck. I can't tell you how happy that makes me, because otherwise I would have had to have got the 1000 grit out and started sanding bits down and then spraying it again. But that is beautiful. That is that bit. I got the idea with the slots from drawings and pictures of John Logie Baird's television, the mechanical one. Ooh, I can't resist it. Look what's arrived this morning. A whole load of lovely second-hand brass Meccano worm drives and the equivalent gears. That is lovely, because I needed one of those, one of each, to just go in here so it turns rotary that way into rotary that way, much slower. This is a lovely piece. There's the bit where you can adjust that way, and here's the bit. Look, oh look at that. Isn't that amazing? So I can spot of glue underneath, it'll run round and fix that absolutely perfectly. Now this one needs to be supporting a spindle sticking out. Now, well, I didn't before. I know I mentioned that I've turned some parts out of brass to hold bearings, but this one I've just drilled a 10mm hole all the way through and a 13mm hole just a little bit both sides, because what I can then do, all fingers and thumbs, or not, is to sit that there, well, and another one there. Now there's enough distance, I'll push that one properly home, there's enough distance between them, the outer part of there and there, to actually provide quite a lot of decent support for a shaft, the 4mm shaft to go through there. So that's great. That, in fact, exactly like that. That one couldn't have a shaft coming right the way through because that would knock into it, hence the fact it's just mounted on from the back. There we are, two more drilled and ready for bearings, and then this lovely little bit that's got, look at this lovely slot, it's just gorgeous. So that just pushes in there, and as before, spot of super glue that holds that, and this one, which I've drilled out to hold a bearing, look at that, oh, and then that's what supports this funny little lever that comes backwards and forwards as the wheels turn. A quick top tip: if you're drilling and tapping a hole to fix a grub screw in or something to tighten onto a shaft, always go past it a little bit, because if you use a standard tap, obviously unless you've got a bull nose tap, which I broke and haven't anymore, which is sort of tap right to the end, the only full tap starts, you know, about that distance from the end of it. If you don't go that far, then the screw won't tighten up properly, and even with the wonderful drill tap, you still have to sort of get up to about there to ensure that the thread is cut far enough, and having that little hole just allows you to do that, I think. Oh, look at all these exciting parts. These pulley things, V bearings or whatever, I've got a bearing in the middle, they're perfect for running the ball chain over, but they're M5, a 5mm hole. So I've got some M5 studding, M5 dome nuts and M5 washers. Thing is, see, these aren't made as nice as they used to be. The centre of the bearing is actually it's not even level with the outside of the bearing, it's actually slightly within it on both sides. How mean is that? So rather than using normal washers, which would then just clamp down and grip everything, I'm really pleased that I managed to find some leftovers on this sheet I made for when I was making the barometric prognosticator, I think, to solve this exact problem. So I've cut them out so they're just the right size to support that centre bit, no more, hopefully. Yeah, we've got the steel rivets, stainless steel rivets, which make beautiful little axles, absolutely perfect because they're within very, very tight tolerances. And my lovely new springs, ooh, and a couple of lovely little copper rivets that I'm going to use to support one of my lovely new springs. that's a bit annoying because the ones I had were too wide. These wretched bearings. So I've had to cut some more out. Right, let's give that a go. Well, that was interesting. Very strange doing something, not swearing or cursing or anything else, I don't think, although probably mumbling to myself like I normally do, but actually filming myself putting things together. So we've got that nice little bit, very pleased with that, and this other nice little bit which will keep the chain tensioned. That's right. As you know, I haven't got any measurements, but I've got a ruler, and I'm going to fix this bit down first of all. Seems like a good idea. And that is 21.1 centimetres, 211 millimetres. That's right, 211 millimetres. Like so. And if I loosen these screws, I've got those slots so I can position it really accurately. Now I will put this front one on, and then I've actually got all the bits necessary to get the next spinny disc on with the black one with the slices cut out of it. Right, I reckon that is perpendicular or right angles or something or other, so that's good. I've tightened them all, and I managed to scratch the gear when I was trying to get the grub screw in that angled hole, so that's having to be resprayed. So I can't put the next bit together. I'll find some. Oh, I might start on the I'll start on the governor assembly. Yes. Ooh, lovely moving parts. That's exciting. And I'll tell you what, how I made these bits, because I built this before I had a 3D printer. Look, these linkages. I've come up with a cunning plan, which I was very pleased with. What I did on the laser cutter, of course, is to cut out shapes like this, and then on the bandsaw very carefully cut out 2 slots. Oh, you take your eye off the ball for a second, a split second. I realised after I'd sprayed this that there was a huge lump of detritus stuck on it, so I've had to sand that off, respray that, and while that's drying I thought I'd just get on with assembling this large gear at the end, because I'd got all the bits made up. And then I noticed that the jig I was going to use to fix this onto the back, to glue it on the back, didn't fit through the hole, so I just quickly thought, oh, just drill that hole out to 13. Having done that, the drill wandered all over the place, because in fact it should have been 12, because it's not for something, for a bearing. So stupid, blink of an eye. So I've now ruined that. It's for one of the lovely red sparkly gems. So now what I'm having to do is to make a jig, so I can actually screw this to the jig with a 12mm hole, so I can glue that on, because my lathe isn't big enough to hold everything. What a pain! Live and learn, or not, as the case may be. It is so easy not to get something perfectly centred, especially when it's got a gear that needs to mesh. There's a sheet of 3mm acrylic that I've tapped. I've screwed that onto the front. That's got the 12mm hole in the middle, so I can now theoretically drop that over, and that will line it all up, so I can glue this wretched thing on the back. Hopefully I haven't trapped any nastiness between the two, and which will squash and mark the silver paint. Fingers crossed. Damn it, Janet. It did. It pushed all sorts of little bits in, and it's damaged this wretched silver spray surface. It's so weird, because obviously it's made by the same company, Plasticoat, and it's metallic silver rather than brass. Brass dries really quickly and you can handle it after 20 minutes. This has been painted for days. It's one of the first things I sprayed, because I thought, oh, I know, I'll get that sprayed, give it time to set. Oh yes. So now I'm going to try and spray that again, dust free. Now then, in order to link this wheel to the pulley on the motor, I need to use spring belt. I just happened to have some when I was building the original, and it's worked really well. Now, spring belt. Let's talk about what it is. It's basically a very long spring. Oops. extremely long spring. But it wasn't long enough. And I've discovered they come in packs of 5. Oh, by the way, I've just ordered some more, funnily enough. If you do a Google of Willisco and the Z80 number, it comes up with them. They're still available. They normally have a little one end of each one is turned down a little bit. I don't know how they make it, but it goes into a sort of spiral. And the way you fix them together is you unwind, sort of twist one way, push it inside, and then twist it only about 4 times, and that holds it. And that's all well and good if you haven't had to cut them down. These are the leftovers. How to fix them? Well, I found a way. If you try and sort of push them together like that, it doesn't work at all. Absolutely useless. But if you pull open the last couple, a titchy little fraction, and then you get a piece of wire, which I have now lost. This is what I was using. This spring steel wire. With some masking tape around it, which is all well and good when you can pull it out from the other end, but when you're finishing the loop and you can't, I found it worked equally well just by poking a bit of this through one of the things. It just gives it a centre. It's much smaller than necessary, but it gives you something so you can twist it together. It took a while, but I managed it, and I worked out how long a length I needed by measuring round with a piece of string. How long is a piece of string? And then doing a very bad drawing, and then getting all that wrong, but finding it was 660 millimetres length, the string. So I've said 10 millimetres less for the spring, because it's really spring, and it seems fairly sort of the same tension. And that I've now not wired up, but I've now put it on here, and I've connected the motor. Let's see what happens. Now the motor is rated for up to 5 volts. I'm going to turn it up to 5, because that's the sort of standard. Let's have a look. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Oh my giddy aunts. That's ridiculously fast. Right, let's turn this down then. They're good quality motors, so they will actually work at quite low voltages. See how slowly. Ooh, that's more like the speed that I want it to go at. That's at 1 volt. I wonder if it'll start off at 1. It does. So if I run that motor at 1 volt, that's a much better speed. How amazing. But they have such good quality. It's an AV motor for use in cassette players and things like that, where they have got really strong magnets and very fine coils and very good quality. That's lovely. I think that makes a nice end to this video. Yeah, I could just keep going on and on, which I am, because the next thing I've got to do, obviously, are all these exciting parts and things to fix on here with the ball chain. So I'm going to get on with that, and I will try and remember to keep videoing my progress. Hope you've enjoyed watching it. Please let me know if you've got any questions or want any help or know how to buy any of the things that I've used or work with them. Please remember to click subscribe and like on the bell button, and hope to see you next time. I do love making luminescent epizoescopes. See you soon.